invisible hand is a phrase that was introduced by Adam Smith in his great book, The Wealth of Nations, in which he talked about the way in which individuals who intended only to pursue their own interests were led by an invisible hand to promote the public welfare, which was no part of their intention. He was talking about the economic market, about the market in which people buy and sell. And he was pointing out that in order for a butcher or a baker or a candlestick maker to make an income, he had to produce something that somebody wanted to buy. And therefore, in the process of promoting his own interests or looking to his own profit, he ended up serving the interests of his customers.
Back into line. Why don't governments learn? Because governments never learn. Only people learn. And the people who learn today may not be the people in charge of economic policy tomorrow. As you contemplate this, you may come to agree with me that what we need are constitutional restraints on the power of government to interfere with free markets in foreign exchange, in foreign trade, in many other aspects of our lives.
This film has set me on edge. There is political, social, ethical considerations which do not reflect in the economic philosophy put out. There is a pervading feeling in this that the individual worker is to be totally sacrificed for the overall good of society. I don't see how possibly you can sacrifice individuals for overall good for society, because society is nothing but those millions and millions of individuals put together. And nowhere is there any consideration given to the social and the ethical aspects of the free trade formula that you advocate.
But you are the first one who has ever accused me of putting the interests of society as a whole ahead of the interests of individuals. If there's one element in my social philosophy, my ethical philosophy that's predominant, it is that the ultimate unit is the human being, the individual, and that society is a means whereby we jointly achieve our objectives. I would argue that the social and moral issues are all on the side of free trade, that it is you and people like you who introduce protection, who are the ones who are violating fundamental social and moral issues. Tell me, what trade union represents the workers who are displaced because high tariffs reduce exports from this country? Because high tariffs make steel, for example, or other goods more expensive. As a result, those industries which use steel have to charge higher prices. They have fewer employees. The export industries that would grow up to balance the imports, tell me, what union represents them? What moral and ethical view do you have about their interests?
Why would you want to return to a concept that this country had in 1900? Why would you want to return to where a few control the economic destiny of every working man and woman?
It's exactly the other way, Mr. Deason. The best way to limit the control of a few is free trade on a worldwide basis. There is no measure whatsoever that would do more to prevent private monopoly development than complete free trade. It would be far more effective than all the antitrust suits in the world.
I totally disagree. You would wind up with a situation like in the movie Rollerball, where corporations carved out their spheres of economic influence throughout the world and controlled everything. It would be controlled by corporations in its entirety.
Excuse me, you saw the picture of Hong Kong, didn't you?
Yes.
Where are those corporations there? But as to antitrust,
yeah.
I am in favor of the laws which make agreements in restraint of trade illegal. Most of the rest of the antitrust apparatus has promoted monopoly instead of hindered monopoly. If you look at where there are monopolistic elements in the world and in the United States, including the multinationals you want to refer to, in almost every case, that monopoly derives from a special grant by government. And therefore, the problem is not how does government enforce competition? How do you keep government from setting up monopolies? That's the real problem if you look at the real world and not at the preamble or the language of antitrust measures and similar laws.
How close are you to what Deason was saying a moment ago, though, in this area? He seemed to be arguing with you that there was a responsibility to make competition work.
The responsibility is to set up a framework of laws and of arrangements under which competition will flourish. And the most
inevitably flourish? I mean, or...
Well, so far as I know, I don't know of any case in history in which monopolies have been able to maintain themselves for very long without having government assistance directly come in on their side. The trade union monopolies that Mr. Deason represents would never have the kind of power they do now if it weren't for the special privileges which government has granted to them. I can perfectly well understand his being in favor of such action, of antitrust action by the government, because it really is pro-monopoly action in the main.
Let me ask you a question. How long do you think that the United States would survive if the United States enacted what you would like to have?
I think the United States would prosper in a way that is hardly imaginable today. It would be an example and a beacon to the rest of the world. What kind of sense does it make? Here we are supposedly the leaders of the world. We are the ones who promote freedom and free enterprise and individual initiative. And what do? We force puny little Hong Kong to impose limits, restrictions on its exports at tariffs in order to protect our textile workers. We go to Japan and we say to Japan, for God's sakes, you got to limit the number of television sets you come out. Instead of doing that, we ought to be setting an example to the world. And if we set the kind of an example to the world that Great Britain set to the world in the 19th century, it would be have a tremendous impact. It would strengthen our moral position in the world. It would strengthen our ethical position in the world. Instead of giving money to underdeveloped countries to produce products which we then refuse to buy and don't let them export to us, we would be saying to the rest of the world, if you produce anything, if you can produce anything that can have a market here, come, we're delighted to buy it, and we'll produce things for you to buy. That's the kind of a pattern I would like to see the United States establish.
Your members buy that?
Such an alliance. In my opinion, the strongest argument for free enterprise is that it prevents anybody from having too much power, whether that person is a government official, a trade union official, or a business executive. It forces them to put up or shut up. They either have to deliver the goods, produce something that people are willing to pay for or willing to buy, or else they have to go into a different business.